What is up, QC fam? It is Queen Chef, chef, author, healer. I am a chef by trade, writer by gift, healer by nature. And I like to talk all things healing. I like to talk self-mastery, spirituality. And I like to teach specifically from 4 pillars. And that is inner child wounds, self-love, energy alignment, and purpose discovery. So everything we discuss on this channel will generally fall under those categories as it relates to self-mastery, spirituality, and healing. So, what I want to talk about today, the people who are new to spirituality, the people who are, even if you're not new and you are just considering the change, the switch, like there is a lot happening on social media right now. There's a lot happening just in general right now around information that is coming out, information that is being shared. That's one of the beautiful things about social media, is the fact that now we get to sharing information that, there was a time that you probably had to keep more to yourself, or people in general just did not discuss certain things because they weren't sure if it was safe. They weren't sure who else was thinking what they were thinking. Now we got social media and all kinds of information is all over the place. Now that's a double-edged sword. But before we really get into it, the first thing I want to do is, you'll know this is for you if you are just at a transformational phase in your life and you are having questions that you may not be getting answers to. You may not be getting satisfactory answers even. You may not be getting answers that make sense. So you might be peeking over into the spiritual side to see what's going on over there, to see, what all this shadow work is they talking about, what all this healing is they talking about, what all this, you're hearing about hoodoo and ATR and all these different things. This is probably going to be a part series. Like there's going to be a part 2, 3, 4, probably. So make sure you subscribe and like and follow, do all the stuff, do all the things. But there's probably going to be a series just because there is so much. And one thing I didn't mention in my little intro there is I teach from my experience. That's the first thing to know. And we're going to get more into that too, because there's a lot of people out here putting out a lot of different information. What I want to start with though, I want to start with this. I want to be the first person to affirm you in what you are doing, what you are thinking, the decisions you are about to make for yourself, for your life ultimately, and for your bloodline. Because, hey, let's be real, the decisions you make will affect those who come after you. So I want to be the first to affirm you and say what you are doing, it's not easy. So congratulations to you. You are brave. You are bold. You are brilliant. You are a change maker. You are a difference maker. You know what I mean? I really, really want you to know that what you're doing, it is not easy. No matter how many people sit up and talk about how stupid this particular religion is, or how silly this particular group sounds, and you know what I mean, all the rights and the wrongs of the this and that. With all that going on, what you are doing is not easy. So please know that I mean it. I truly mean it when I tell you you are brave and you are brilliant. And let me tell you, this is coming from somebody. I'm gonna give a little bit of my background. I give my experiences throughout these conversations, but in short, I'll explain more throughout each part, throughout the series of if you are new to spirituality. But just a little bit, I grew up Baptist, Christian Baptist. That is what I was raised in the church. We did a lot of things in the church, was a part of different ministries. So that's what that was my foundation into any sort of religious or spiritual experience outside of just what we experience here on earth. That is my foundation in terms of my relationship to the Most High. So I say that to say, that being my foundation, I completely understand, specifically for those of you who are coming from the church or from a church background. I sympathize and I empathize with you. Know that I understand your plight. I have been there. I was there. Like I said, I grew up that way. Around about, I would say 23. Now, I've always been outspoken. I've always had questions. I've always been a little different when it comes to thinking and the way that I think. But I had to really, really start asking questions and start making how I felt known. I would say around about 24. I'm 34 now. So So I say about 24 years old. So this was like, shortly after I graduated college and, basically was stepping into that real part of adulthood. You know what I mean? And the thing that I noticed when I got out on my own, and I didn't have any structural things telling me what I needed to think, what I needed to do. I needed to go to church on this day. And I mean, there's freedom in college. I was free, but I was still doing the things that I had been brought up to do. You know what I mean? Even throughout college, it was just habitual. I was just doing the things I was already used to doing. So when I stepped out, even outside of that, like having that structure of go to school, go to work, and now it's like, if there's no more school involved, now it's just like real life. Now at that point, I'm in a place, and I'm telling you what I believe, how I believe this unfolded for me and how it came about. Because once I no longer had anybody else telling me what I needed to be doing, what I needed to be thinking or thinking about. That's when my mind was able to really just start to ask questions without feeling scared about asking the questions. I was able to read the things I wanted to read. Because like at this point, like I said, I'm not in school. We just in real life. We in real adulthood at this point. So I'm able to read different things. I'm able to read the things I want to read. I'm able to tap into, and by that point, social media is evolving. I'm a 90s baby. So, social media was already there, but it was very different from 2009 when I went to college, in 2014, and especially to now, 2026. So just the exposure to more knowledge, more people, other adults who were living their lives freely, that alone will make you want to start asking questions. So I said that was a long way of saying I understand where you are in terms of just having questions and wanting to know more. Wanting to know also, after you leave school and after college is done, at that point, you're really trying to figure out, it's kind of like figuring out who you are again, or what is my place in the world. You know what I mean? Even if you didn't go to college, just after you finish doing all the things that they told you supposed to do. That's the point. After you finish doing all that, then it's like, I have to determine, what is my place in this world? Who am I for real? What do I want to do? What do I want to be a part of? You know what I mean? So your questions are also valid. I also want to affirm that for you. Your questions are valid. Your curiosities are valid. Even not knowing who you are, because I make content for all who are interested, but specifically I make content for people like myself who may not have had all the guidance that they feel they should have, or that the world feels that we should have. So I didn't necessarily have all the guidance in a way where I have this long bloodline or family line of women and men and people who say, this is what we are, this is who we are, and this is what we represent in the world. Everybody didn't have that. I was one of those. So having to find that footing, having to find that grounding, that is what led me more into just studying, just reading, wanting to know more about different things, want to know more about my history. I didn't have a lot of my great-grandparents, grandparents, they were passed on my mom's side anyway. They were passed on either before I was born or shortly after. So that being the case, it wasn't a whole lot in terms of history. So I completely understand where you're coming from, especially, and I explained that so that if you can identify, you know where that's coming from. It's just to say, sometimes we kind of just left out there alone to figure out who we are when you don't have an example of what you're supposed to be. I hope that makes sense. So, like I said, even if you've established yourself in your career, this could be happening to you at any age. Even if you're establishing in every other part of your life, but figuring out who you are and where you belong and what you're supposed to be doing in terms of spirituality, it's scary. It's scary. That's also why I mentioned the church background in particular. If you come from any strong religious group or that had a strong impact in your life, it's scary. This can be a scary time. So I also want to affirm you in that. That's why I say you're brave. This is not an easy thing to do, because what is going to take place, or what is already taking place, this is a process of completely unlearning. This is why also why it falls under the categories of healing, those healing sectors, because this is a process of stripping yourself down. You, in order to successfully step away from everything that you have known, you have to, it's not that you even have to tell yourself that it was all wrong, but there's a part of you that is going to feel wrong. There's a part of you that feels like you're doing something wrong, even by asking the questions, just by wanting to go on the journey of something else. There's so much in you that's going to feel wrong, and I want to tell you it's not. You're not wrong, because this is your life. This is your soul. This is about your destiny, and you have every right. This is your journey. You have every right to feel how you feel, to ask the questions you want to know, and to walk a new path. You don't have to follow the path of those before you. And that's a good thing, I would say, for those of us who maybe didn't have those stronger examples in our lives, because you don't necessarily, there's no wrong in that regard. But please know that it is still a scary process. And part of that is going to come from some of what you probably already experienced. People telling you you're wrong. People telling you you're going to hell. People telling you that we don't do that. That's not what we're supposed to be doing. You know what I mean? Or trying to throw the religion back at you when you start asking questions, and they're not, instead of giving you answers, they're giving you Bible verses. I get it. I understand. That's all I'm gonna say on that, in that regard. I understand. Now, another thing to know, this can be a very lonely time. This can be a very lonely time simply because of some of the things I just said. People might start to distance themselves from you. You might just feel the need to isolate and distance yourself from everyone. That is something I went through in the earlier part of my journey. It was just, I did not want the influence of outside voices. And for me, that was one of the biggest lessons on my journey, all the way up until recently. You know what I mean? Up until the last few years, that's one of the biggest things for me, is just knowing that everything about me, all of my answers, my likes, my dislikes, the things that I think that I know, they have to come from within me. And so sometimes you just have to silence that outside noise, because sometimes it is a distraction. Sometimes you are getting information that is contradictory to what you're feeling, and then you stay stuck. You get stagnant like that because you feel in a way, you have these questions, you want to take this new path, and people telling you you shouldn't, you're not supposed to, it's wrong, it's demonic, it's just all sorts of things. So that being the case, you might have to isolate. I don't like to tell people, because everybody's journey looks different. Some people will be able to, stay in contact with everybody they've been in contact with and still take a different route and completely ignore what's going on over here. You know what I mean? But a lot of times you'll be guided into isolation for your benefit. And that's just a part of this journey. And it's so, and like I said, most of it is because you have to learn how to hear from the inner you. You have to learn how to hear from your higher self in order to identify those guides, in order to identify, when you're hearing a voice from spirit, or you're hearing guidance from the universe, versus you hearing trauma in your ear from childhood wounds. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of times where you'll want to go off and do something, or you have a question about something, and that little voice inside that's not even your voice. It could just be the voice of the people you were raised by. You know what I mean? It could be the voice of a parent who disapproves, and that stops you. It conflicts, and it keeps you stuck. So this is me talking about like what that unlearning process is going to look like. And like I said, it can be scary. It is scary. It can be lonely. And just know, if you are just walking away from a religious group of any kind, it's also, the journey is just beginning. Like, please know that your journey is just beginning. Now, my journey was a little bit different, and that's why I said I'm going to do parts to this, because I want to talk about each part individually. Like I said, around about 24 was when I really started to kind of get out and separate myself from the church. And just because I wanted to know more, I wanted to do more, I wanted to be able to think for myself. I wanted to know what else is going on besides this, because There are parts of it that just may not resonate with you. There are parts of it that just may not make sense to you. And that is okay. Like, that is okay. So now going straight into that unlearning, you will have to strip yourself of what those prior systems have told you. So that whole you're going to hell and you're going to burn. Or, you know, even if your background wasn't Christianity, it was something else, where they didn't believe in it in that regard. It wasn't hell, but whatever those consequences were, you will have to strip yourself of that information just in a way that it does not have a stronghold on you. And like I said, it's scary. It's scary. I know it's scary. I know. I know. Because to think, like, it's not an easy thing to do, to grow up learning something your entire life, and then you get to your 20s, your 30s, your 40s even, and older. Like, sometimes we have these revelations later in life. Like, I've seen it happen. I've talked to people who've had it happen, and just nothing feels right anymore. So I said that to say, stripping yourself of those prior systems and understanding that that's the beginning of your shadow work. That unlearning process is the beginning of your shadow work. So when you hear us talk about shadow work is just requires an extreme level of introspection, an extreme level of self-awareness. And there's an entire process of, and that is why healing and spirituality, just in general, because even spirituality has its sections, you know what I mean? You'll hear Ifa girls say, I'm spiritual, I'm not religious. You'll hear hoodoo girls say that. You'll hear just the whimsical, for the fairy girls say, you know what I mean? You'll find your lane, you'll find your place, but before you try to find your place in a new area, we got to deal with this part. You have to unlearn all of those things that you've already been taught. And all that means is, don't hold them in such high regard that you just feel that is the factual truth, because that is how it was taught to us. Like, and I'm gonna use the example of Christianity because that's my background. That's what I have to go with. That's the experience and the knowledge I have to go on. So, but when people constantly just say Jesus is the way, the life, and the truth, and Jesus is our one and only Savior, this is the only way, any other way is wrong, you got to unlearn those. You have to strip yourself of thinking that is the absolute truth. Because in order for you to start learning new things, before you try to jump out there and you start gathering all your crystals and whatever route you decide to go, or you go join an Elay if it's going to be, or African traditional group, whatever you decide, you got to start with that unlearning process, because that's going to block you from being able to go into anything in a full way. It's going to block you from being able to do it with the right intention, because you don't want to be trying to run so hard and so fast away from where you came that you run into something that ain't necessarily best for you. Now, your journey is your journey. Everything that happens for a reason. Nothing happens by coincidence. I'm a firm believer in that. However, we do take some missteps and some misturns that sometimes we can avoid if we do processes right. I think we all can agree there. So, like I said, the unlearning and the shadow work phases is going to be about stripping yourself of holding those prior systems in such high regard, or as if they are the only way. And the reason you also have to do that is because a lot of those things taught us to lead with fear. A lot of those systems and processes are led by fear, with fear. They're fueled by our fears. So I've always told people, one of the things I hate most in religion in particular is that they teach you to fear God. If you're taught to fear God, and then you are told that you are a reflection of God, or God created us in his image, you are then going to fear all the great things about you. Everything that is good in you, everything that is why they say we fear success sometimes. Or we get stifled, or we get held back because we fear success. Like, subconsciously. It's not an outward thing, but if subconsciously you fear success, why would that be? Why would you teach me that I'm supposed to have this beautiful relationship and connection to the Most High God, the Creator, but then tell me to fear that? It don't make sense. That was one of the questions I had when I was, coming up in this thing, when I first jumped off the porch, if you will. But listen, why it don't make sense. And a lot of things that, you know, once you start to peek outside, a lot of things you will see that they just aren't going to make sense. But just for part one of this, I just want to focus on, sorry, y'all got stuffy out of nowhere. Anyway, a lot of this, I just wanted to focus on for this first part, what to expect and what that unlearning needs to look like. You have to, like I said, those prior systems, they are fueled by fear. They are led through fear, and you have to and that's why being brave through this part of the process is so important, because once you strip yourself of that fear, now we can really get into the nitty-gritty of all the shadow work of what that needs to look like. Because the reason shadow work ain't just writing out your feelings in a journal. Shadow work, I mean, we got to really get down in it, and we got to talk about why you are the way you are. And it's not that nothing is wrong with you, but we got to talk about what happened to you. You know what I mean? Those are the things that, that's the reason for those. Journaling is just another tool for it, but that's the reason that those processes are necessary. Because as we get into shadow work, you got to really, there's a mirror you got to hold up to yourself. And once you strip yourself of everything, it's who are you? Why are you? You know what I mean? Why do you exist the way you do? And who do you desire to be moving forward? What does your highest and best self look like? And then what are the steps you're going to take to get there? That's why you got to do all that unlearning first. Because a lot of it is kind of a lot of it is fueled and filled with toxic cycles. Things that we just take on and pass down because it's what we told to do. But nobody has ever gotten really far. Nobody has ever gotten to their highest and best self by operating in a way where they don't think for themselves. If I had to say anything, that's probably my biggest issue with religion as a construct, is it does not teach you to think for yourself. Everything you are taught to do, taught to think, everything that happens, everything that you do, it's always tied to something outside of you. This particular brand of spirituality, this is about what's going on internally, how to tap into that. And then as you tap into that, and this is why even my healing conversations are based on those 4 pillars, because you got self-love first, energy alignment. So you get that self-love that's coming with the shadow work. And then that energy alignment is about getting in line, building that relationship with the Most High, whatever that looks like for you, and whomever you decide to call the Most High, whatever it is, building that relationship and then getting in line with that. And then you got those inner child wounds, addressing all of that so that you can reach your highest and best self. Because if you have inner child wounds of any kind, if you have any type of hurt, pain, and everybody thinks it has to be like this big, grandiose, traumatic thing that happened. It don't have to be that. Your life could be like mine, where it wasn't just this one thing. It could be just the way you came up in general. It may not have necessarily been traumatic, but it didn't set you, for me, my biggest thing was just instability. My childhood and growing up, it was just full of a lot of instability, too much responsibility at the ages I was giving them, just too much to hold. Survival was what was taught, and that's it. Just make it. You know what I mean? So I say that to say, as you're moving through this process, as this journey begins to unfold for you, those pillars are what I use, because, and then actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. I was getting into the last one. The reason purpose discovery is that last one, because as you formulate that relationship with the Most High, you're going to start to care more about what you're supposed to be doing in this realm. You're going to start to wonder and start to want to know more about, what am I actually supposed to be doing? I know what my job is. I know what's paying me to survive in this realm. But what am I supposed to be giving back to this realm? What am I supposed to be doing on this earth? What is my role? And that's that purpose discovery part. That is the 4th pillar that I always talk about in terms of healing topics. So anyway, I didn't want this video to get too long. Like I said, there is going to be a part 2. That next part is, I'm going to give you some do's and don'ts. We're going to move into the do's and don'ts of all of this, what to be prepared for, what to stay away from, understanding your role, your place, because there's a lot with this. And I'm looking at my little notes right here, because I forget stuff. If you just getting over here, just know that I forget stuff. So I write everything down. I just want to make sure I cover everything I want to cover in this part. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That unlearning process, and then begin to tap into like the shadow work and what your shadow work needs to be. Like I said, journaling is cool, but that's just one tool. We got to talk a lot more about different tools and what you are doing in the shadow work process. So another thing I want to say, and I'm gonna close it with this, like don't try to rush this. Don't try to jump so far ahead. Like, I'm gonna be this, and I'm gonna look like this, and I'm gonna dress like this, and I'm gonna get this, and I'm gonna put these on my hair, and all that is aesthetic. And if you are leaving a religious group to step outside of that and try to recreate yourself as something new, all for it to be aesthetic, then you wasting everybody's time. Yours in particular. You wasting your time. Your spirit guides, your team, you wasting everybody's time. Because if it's all about aesthetics for you, if it's all about the look and how it's supposed to look and acquiring things before you actually do this process of unlearning, allowing yourself, like all of this is a process. You don't wake up and just forget about the church and know everything about some other thing or some other spirituality or group or you know what I mean? You don't just forget about that and wake up as something new. Because if that's the case, you might as well stay where you at. I'm just be honest. You might as well stay where you at. And that's why they say a lot of this is going to be about your own personal accountability for yourself, about your life. Again, like I said, that shadow work, that's that next step. After you do that unlearning and reminding yourself. So, and actually, I'm going to give you a little assignment. Get 3 good affirmations. 3 good, strong affirmations that will affirm you daily as you move through this process. And I'm going to try to come with one off the top. Something along the lines of, I am brave for wanting to step into this highest and best version of myself. These are the things you are going to need as you move through this. But I say get you 3 good, strong ones, because when you wake up every day from this day moving forward, from the day you decide that you want to do something new, that you want to tap into the highest part of you, your higher self, the moment you decide that, you need something to help keep you going. Affirmations are my favorite. I got them all around. They everywhere. But affirmations are my favorite because you always got it with you. You don't need no pen. You don't need no journal. It's right here. So get you 3 good ones for part 1 of this process, this unlearning. Affirm your bravery. Remind yourself that this is not easy, but I'm going to do it because I deserve to access and be the best and highest part of me. So please know that is what this journey is all about. That is what the spiritual journey is all about. It's a whole lot of accountability over here. It's a whole lot of self-awareness over here. And anybody tell you anything different, they lying. But we're going to get more into that when we get into the do's and don'ts video. That will be part 2 of this If You Are New to Spirituality series. Because I don't know how many parts it's going to get to, because there's so much that can be said. But this is already 30 minutes. So this is enough for the moment. Make sure you subscribe so you can get that notification when I drop part 2. It'll be coming right behind this one. Thank y'all so much for being here. I appreciate you, and I hope that something in here was helpful to you today. Learn life.